This episode is being brought to you by Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Alaska Realty. Whether you're investing in residential, buying or selling commercial properties anywhere in the state of Alaska, we're here to assist. To reach us, you can contact me at lottie@lottiemichael.com or my cell phone, 907-242-7603. And for comments or questions about residential properties, reach out to Connie Yoshimura at 907-229-2703, 229-2703. Welcome, everyone. I'm Connie Yoshimura, and this is the Connie and Lottie Insider Real Estate. And today we have Mike Janes with us, a 25-year senior vice president of the commercial real estate division for Berkshire Hathaway. And our guest today is Daniel McKenna Foster. And Daniel, you are head of long-range planning for the municipality of Anchorage. And we're here to talk to you a little bit about wetlands. But before we begin that conversation, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Connie, and thanks for having me. So I came to Alaska about 10 years ago now. I landed in Kodiak first. I worked for the Kodiak Island Borough as a long-range planner there. Previously, I'd been working in Washington, D.C. for one of those big firms doing Department of Defense planning, that kind of thing. So I came up to Alaska, and that's where I cut my teeth in zoning and plans and the local environment. Then I went down to Oregon for a couple years. I was an affordable housing planner for a year or two in a college town in Oregon. And then I came back up to Anchorage in 2021. Always loved Anchorage. I loved coming here when I lived in Kodiak and been here almost 5 years. And I just love the city and I love working here. So.
All right. Thank you. We appreciate hearing all that.
Big switch going from D.C. to Kodiak or Old Harbor.
I grew up in Denver, so I was like, I got to get back west. I don't want to be on the East Coast anymore. And so I just wanted the fresh air and clean water. And it wasn't
Good living.
Wasn't a difficult decision. Yeah.
You do a lot of fishing.
I'm embarrassed to say I don't do a lot of fishing. I like to get outside, but I leave the fish for everybody else.
Yeah, you leave the fish for Mike Janes,
Yeah.
lifelong Alaskan, born and raised.
Yeah, more for you.
All right. So we invited you because you are not only because of all your resume and all the things that you've done that are important to the municipality, but because I understand that you are in charge of the new wetlands plan for the municipality of Anchorage.
Yeah, in the long-range planning, so I'm the long-range planning manager, we are just undergoing an update. We just kicked this off yesterday internally to update the Anchorage Wetlands Management Plan, which I think was adopted in 2014. There's some pieces that are a little out of date. There's some regulatory changes that need to be fixed up. So we've gotten the funding. We just did a phase 1 update that'll make some sort of administrative changes. And then in the next year or two, we're going to really overhaul the plan, redo the mapping. Pretty exciting, looking at both the technical and the policy pieces of it. So to the hard question of what a wetland is, I think in Anchorage, at least, there's a wetland that is defined as wetland by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as waters of the United States. And then there's a wetland that is defined in the Anchorage Wetlands Management Plan and mapped on our wetlands map. Sometimes the two diverge, but we have an interesting system where our wetlands map is regulatory. It's just like a zoning layer, right? The U.S. Army Corps makes their determinations. They can say this is or isn't part of the wetlands of the United States, but there might be cases where they say, for us, we don't consider this a wetland, but the Anchorage Management Plan does still. So I would say there's sort of two definitions. It's what the Army Corps says it is and what is mapped on our wetlands map.
But hasn't the Army Corps abdicated a certain amount of regulation to the municipality of Anchorage, or am I mistaken about that?
No, you're correct. So there's a kind of interesting history there. Is up until a few years ago, the municipality of Anchorage had a general permit, which meant we could do some of the permitting for the Army Corps. I believe it was maybe in 2021 that they declined to renew our permit. So we lost that power to make those sort of decisions for them. I think it was for the lower class wetlands. Basically, the Army Corps said, okay, we trust the municipality to make that determination or allow this type of development. And then they just didn't renew the permit. So then we were in an interesting situation. And then there was another change in the regulatory world with a Supreme Court decision that changed the definition of what a wetland is for the federal government. It was basically, I think, several years ago in Idaho, a couple was trying to build a house, and the house was next to this big lake. there was a stream running into a ditch that connected to the lake, and the Army Corps said, this is wetlands of the United States, so you have to get a wetlands permit, and the couple sued, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court, and that was a Sackett decision. And so the Sackett decision was pretty monumental in that it changed the definition of what a wetland is. So previously it was anything defined as waters of the United States, and the Sackett decision changed it to, I believe, wetlands with a continuous surface connection to bodies that are waters of the United States. So now it's really anything that has a real strong connection to a really big river, a really big waterway, or the ocean. Whereas previously it could be a wetland completely landlocked. So that was a big change too. So we lost the general permit, and then the definition of wetlands changed. So that's another reason to update the plan now, because the plan was basically created in a completely different regulatory environment.
So we used to have A, B, and C. That's how it was prior to 21.
Yeah.
And C, when filing a permit and somebody, and here's your plan. B was a score test of an A, you pretty much weren't going to touch.
So that's when the federal government 21 took that away from us, right? And then with that Sackett decision there, it allowed us to essentially, a lot more land all of a sudden now became developable across the United States.
Yeah, and the ABC is still mostly in place, and that's what so again, there's the federal wetlands and then the Anchorage municipal wetlands, and we still use that classification system. And under the general permit, we had more flexibility to permit within that C class. So now, we always say if it's jurisdiction of the United States or not, that the property owner has to figure that out. But for A, B, and C as mapped locally, we do have a set of rules. If you come in, you get a permit, and you're disturbing this much of C class, you just do the permit. If it's B class, you have to go to the Watershed Natural Resources Commission, and same with A class. I think most A class is not really developable. B can be developed with some sort of mitigation, and C can be developed with mitigation and some other measures. So the A, B, and C is still in place, but yeah, there's a little bit of difference in the overlap between where the federal government gets involved or doesn't get involved.
Yeah, that's a question. What percent do you think, and this is just arbitrary, but what percent do you think do we have of the lands that are vacant in the Anchorage Bowl, let's say, because municipality keeps going, but in the bowl, who do you think the percentage-wise is wetlands?
I couldn't say. I don't want to get...
Is it 60? I said, when we look at lands, you see that, and people always wonder, how come we didn't develop a Target over there, or why did we Walgreens there? And you look at it, and the reason why is because it's a wetland there that people don't realize, because sometimes these wetlands come in, it's not just having standing water, it's the greenery handle for acceptable turf, the greenery and things like that you come in there. And I know and it's also the soils. And I were talking before, you can't change the dirt. You literally have to dig it out and replace it if you're going to try to. But even if you go through and add to this, we compact it and you build, all that surrounding area is still going to be that sponge. It's still going to be coming in, acting at low area or draining to.
Are you talking about the Midtown Walmart and the REA? So you've got a map here, which I think is fascinating, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. This is an old image. I'll provide a better image for later, but this is sort of Benson and Northern Lights. This is Blueberry Lake in Midtown, which I've never seen before because it's been gone for a long time. But at one time there were wetlands in many places and now in Anchorage you would never think there were. And it's interesting too. I'm sure you hear it often. People come and say, "Why don't you just build there?" Or "Why don't we develop that?" Or there's plenty of great vacant property. In my experience, if there's still vacant property in a city of this size and this age, there's probably something with it. It's maybe slope or soils or wetlands or something like that. And we were talking about this a bit earlier. I think in my experience also, the wetlands never really forget, or the water bodies never really forget. So even if you build over something like this, something about the topography, the way the water flows, it's still going to be there. Where I live, they not long ago redid the parking lot. It's like, oh, fantastic, drainage is going to be fixed. And it's interesting, a year later, you can see all the drainage issues are exactly the same. And to me, it seems like the land really has a memory about where the water wants to go. And that's an enduring problem.
It's the genetics of the land.
Yeah, that's
right. We can never get rid of the genetics.
Yeah.
It's even a design too. Do they use that as retention? Do do some of these, not like you want a big lake in your parking lot, but is that part of a design almost where, because you have underground, you'll have holding cells on some areas where you can fill volume and space, but it's empty and water can go into it until it percolates out. Yeah. Do they even do that with parking lots?
I think engineers can do anything, and I'll leave that to them. But I think you're right. There can be that temporary holding or long-term holding or on-site mitigation. But yeah, fortunately, we have a lot of very good water experts in Anchorage, but I don't know much about it.
Well, that Target site did a great job of going through essentially where we're at C Street in the hundreds, and they went through, redeveloped that area from industrial to a retail, but then they incorporated wetlands, and they had to, but they incorporated the wetlands into that. It just makes it more a prettier environment.
Aesthetically.
Get that.
Yeah.
Subject to big parking lot.
So what's a wetlands bank? I've paid into a wetlands bank to develop portions of residential property, but it's always, where does that money go and who has a wetlands bank?
It's a great question. So my understanding is a wetlands bank is if you're developing in an area that's already been developed and there's wetlands there and the municipality doesn't lose more wetlands, but it's all about trade-offs, right? So I think the wetlands bank is a tool to enable sort of trade-offs that, okay, we're going to develop this wetland now, and maybe it's no longer as functional as it used to be, but in doing that, you pay a fee that goes to protect a wetland somewhere else that will be protected in perpetuity. Because there are many places in Anchorage where there's a big wetland, and wetlands can function at different levels. Say you have 10 acres of wetland, it's very functional. At 8 acres, it's still functional. At 6 acres, it's becoming less functional. Some wetlands have been built out and it really isn't as functional. It's performing these infrastructure services of storing water, cleaning water, that sort of thing. So the wetlands bank is, say you're building somewhere and there's a wetland on it and you say, you know what, I don't think it's really part of the network anymore, it's not functional. Paying into the bank allows you pay that money and then that goes to protect wetlands somewhere else. So it's really a regional perspective, thinking about, okay, we're going to keep developing in the developed area, but then hopefully protect the wetlands in the sort of less developed area and protect those into perpetuity.
Who has wetland banks?
So I believe Great Land Trust is the main wetlands bank, and that's the one that we use. So HLB is part of the municipality. They talk about some of that, and they do a little bit of that holding. But I believe Great Land Trust is the most established wetlands bank in the municipality. And I think in the region, they do a lot of work up in the valley and other places as well.
We want to take a quick moment to thank Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Alaska Realty for supporting this episode. One of the things we appreciate about our team is that our agents do far more than open a door. We help clients understand neighborhoods, evaluate investment opportunities, navigate commercial leases, prepare homes for sale, and make smart long-term real estate decisions. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or a growing business looking for office space, or a national or international Fortune 500 company exploring opportunities in Alaska, we're here to facilitate and help you. Visit Berkshire Hathaway Home Services AlaskaRealty.com to connect with Lottie Michael at 907-242-7603 or Connie Yoshimura at 907-229-2703.
So just one final question about wetlands banks. How much does it cost per acre or to contribute? Who makes that decision? For example, when I was developing Huffman Timbers, there was a drainage that was classified as wetlands, and we had to pay into a wetlands bank $75,000 in order to develop that portion of the property. So how is that determined? Do you have any idea? In
long range, we don't do any of these determinations, but as we've been updating the plan, we have been looking at that and really looking at, say somebody comes and they want to develop, maybe there's mitigation you could do on site, or maybe there's that path. And I think traditionally we have followed, or anybody we've worked with has followed the methodology of the Army Corps, which looks at, I don't know if they look at 3 elements or something like that. And so I think they're evaluating sort of the value of the wetland in terms of the whole system. Does it take in a lot of water? How functional it is? What kind of robust it is? So I couldn't give you an exact number, and I don't think right now we have a very precise formula, but that's one thing we want to clarify in the wetlands plan update. Just yesterday, we had a big internal meeting and everybody said, we want this to be clear for people using it. So somebody can come in and it's a yes or no, and it's not this sort of having 20 people get together and figure something out. So that's an area where we'd like to get more clarity. I think traditionally we have used the Army Corps methodology, and we probably will still. But again, for somebody on the outside, it's like we just want certainty probably, right? So that is a priority for us. But right now I don't know exactly that $75,000 number. I don't know if that was based on acreage or maybe it was based on those particular wetlands at that time, or that would be something I'd probably have to ask Great Land Trust.
But this guy, there's an A and a B credit at a certain level, and then the next level. But that's the hard part, is it's this enigma of you're a developer trying to put
Create
this in,
housing.
like, right? And if I want to go through and do something, it'd be nice to at least have an idea of, and not that it has to be definite, but Is it going to be, here's the low end, here's the high end? One here's, and it might be a little combination too. Maybe your combination of B wetland and C wetland and no wetland, but it would be nice to have, like you said, more clarity for the average Joe to be able to see what that.
Clarity and certainty, the two of the priorities of this project.
And timing, seasonal timing can make a big difference in determining wetlands. So I don't know how I should say this. Experienced developers have certain months of the year that they would prefer to have their land evaluated for the purposes of wetlands determination, because it does change even over the course of several years. We've had wetlands, say, up in Potter Creek area, but when you actually go 5 years later, because that's been a 30-year project, you go 5 years later, the wetlands may or may not be the same size, they may not be the same category, and it does change.
Yeah, and that's one of the sort of problems that spurred us to do this update is people would come in and they'd say, okay, I'd like to build here. We look at our map, which is the official map. We say, you got a wetland. They're like, it's dry as a bone. There's nothing there. And they show a picture, but because the map says it is a wetland, we have to go through the permitting process. So a big piece of this will be updating the maps with new sort of delineations. And then we'll have a new official map. And there, like you said, there's a lot of that. Things have changed. So our map is over 10 years old and a lot has changed since then. So that'll be one of the best things to come out of this is a new updated map and a simpler way to update the map as new delineations come along. So that's maybe one of the exciting pieces in the next, just at Planning and Zoning last month, they recommended approval of a change that would allow an administrative change to the map. So right now, if you wanted to change the wetlands map with the delineation, you'd have to go all the way through the whole process, through Planning and Zoning, the Assembly. Now we can do it administratively if we have the approved certified report, and then we can make the change internally, and then we inform the Assembly through an Assembly memo. So
That's a huge change.
huge change. Yeah.
And that's effective now.
That was recommended for approval by Planning and Zoning, so it'll go to the Assembly in the next month or so.
Okay.
But
It's the difference if you're going to do a project this year or next year.
Yeah, it really does.
it does, yeah. But it's interesting in doing that, we found we have a lot of backlog of delineations that need to be updated. So now we're trying to figure out, do we do those all at once or how do we, because that's a lot of mapping to do. So that's another piece we're looking at. But keep an eye out for that. That will be going before the Assembly. It's the phase 1 of the update in the next month or two.
Yeah, about, if you look at older maps that we've talked about 5 years, we haven't seen any dry as a bone, but doesn't appear to be wetland. Just climate change. And you look at the changes in our maps, and not that things have changed in 5 years, but as we're warming up, these wetlands will start to dry out. And then that's what's happened the last 30 years when we looked at real wetlands that they've had and where are we at today here in 2026.
Yeah, there's just so many changes going on, and one wetland might dry up, but then maybe another area becomes more prone to flooding, and so areas that previously didn't have any problems might not. So it's just another important reason to update it.
But there has to be some connectivity for the definition of the type of wetland that it is for the federal jurisdiction.
So that's
but not for the local. So I'm getting really totally confused.
It is confusing. We haven't done a great job about clarifying that. But yeah, so the federal government, their interest is protecting the waters of the United States.
Okay.
And the Anchorage Wetlands Management Plan is the interest of that plan, and the public is to protect the wetlands that exist in Anchorage. So those are similar, mostly overlapping interests, but they might be separate. For example, say looking at this one, this probably, I can't make the determination, but this is Blueberry Lake. This probably would not have been considered, if it was today, would not be considered waters of the U.S. But if this existed today, the Anchorage Management Plan would absolutely consider it a wetland because it'd say, yeah, it's performing drainage functions and all these other pieces. So the Army Corps might say, totally fine with us. It's not out of our jurisdiction. Whereas the Anchorage Wetlands Management Plan would say, we don't want to be building on top of this because there are all these long-term aspects and it might be serving a drainage function, something like that.
Also, let me ask this question. Today, would a developer be able to put a Walmart in that location and REI?
I'm thinking probably not. And again, I can't presume, but assuming that something like this would probably be A-class wetland. A-class is the most sensitive. Something that's basically a lake is pretty hard to fill in. So I would be guessing if you came to Anchorage today and we started over and that was there, it would probably get mapped as an A-class for the Anchorage Wetlands Management Plan, and you would not be able to build those today. And I think there are a number of cases like that across the bowl. If you look at our old historical imagery, you'll see many places that used to be quite different.
And I'm at spots speaking of history, though, that weren't wetlands but became a wetland. We had a property here on 79th and Petersburg. Now storage units there, but Sean Cooley gone through there and developed that site. The gentleman before that has spent 20 years fighting the U.S. Army Corps because up the road, closer to Lake Otis, the city had a pipe break. Pipe broke, water went down.
Oh.
That was the low point,
Man-made.
and then all of a sudden it became a man-made pond.
Wow.
And then they classified it as a wetland.
Oh,
And it was 30 years of bureaucracy fighting it, say that it wasn't historically. And just because there was this tragic event with that created that.
interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
As a residential developer, all right, if you're looking at a piece of property and you think that it may have a wetland situation, what are the steps that you recommend that someone do during a due diligence period, whether it's a lot, a single family lot, or whether it's 10 acres or 20 acres or whatever, and it's the same for commercial. What are the steps that an owner or a developer needs to go through in order to finally get some approval to build on that particular piece of property?
The first thing I would recommend is go and look at the Muni GIS layers and look at our wetland layer and see if it's there or not. Now, again, as we've talked about, there are instances where the Muni map says, yeah, this is a wetland, and people go on and say, it's been dry for 10 years. But at least that identifies, okay, this is where maybe a new delineation needs to be done, or maybe somebody else has done a delineation in an area that would already fix that. So with this upcoming update, if somebody else has done a delineation or you do a delineation, then you can maybe change that map. And then once it's no longer mapped in our system, then you don't have to go through the wetlands permitting process. But say it is mapped and there's still wetlands there, then you go through our wetlands permitting process, which is currently that you come, if it's above a certain size, you have to go to the Watershed Natural Resources Commission and they make some recommendations, and then we might propose some mitigation measures. So I think anybody who has land right now that is mapped as wetlands and may or may not have wetlands, I would keep track of this phase one and see what's happening. And also think about, and I know it's an expense to have a professional firm go out and do a delineation, but that could be an option, because we want to balance sort of the needs of protecting wetlands with the needs of developing the property that's already within the municipality. And then the other piece, and this is sort of me kicking the can, is that for federal jurisdiction, they're the ones who have the final say on that. So again, if you have a property and say you're down by the coast somewhere, and it might connect to the ocean, it's really going to depend, all of it's going to depend on the Corps. The upland stuff where it seems pretty unlikely it's connected to the waters of the United States, you probably won't have one. But again, the federal government has all the jurisdiction on that. So we say on our permit now, it's up to the property owner to determine whether this is a wetland in federal jurisdiction or not.
You do a overlap of the new website and moving forward with the new delineations that you have that would have wetlands and then a map of the U.S. Army Corps that you could see. Essentially, I could take a layer off on the computer here, just like any other thing. And so I could add that and see where they kind of overlap or don't. Or
our sort of goal, our priority is that, if somebody comes in, and we're working closely with the Corps on this update, is if they come in, we can say, that's Army Corps, you go that route, or with certainty say, doesn't seem like it's Army Corps, and this is the map that they provided us, because they don't have maps right now either. And then they'll go our way. So that is a major priority. Right now you can't do that, but it is a priority of this project for somebody to come in and we can say, go this way for Army Corps, go this way for, because right now we're saying, it's mapped here, but we don't know if it's jurisdictional. And as you probably know, to get a jurisdictional determination from the Corps right now is 18 months or longer. And then they're also providing these sort of letters of non-objection, which is not clear if a jurisdiction, a determination or not. We would like to make that clear. Again, clarity and certainty is the main priority of this project.
So everyone says we're out of land. We say that commercially, we say that residentially. And what percent of our vacant land is wetlands?
That's a good question, going back to what you said. I don't know. I'd have to look that up, because again, to do that, we just take the existing map layer we have and do a calculation. And there are parts where maybe 30% of a lot is wetlands, or maybe it's just a key part in the middle that's wetlands. Or maybe you have a piece of vacant land and there's a little bit of wetland, but then there's an easement through it, which is developable or otherwise not. So that's tricky. I'll do some research on that. But I think, again, like we said before, in my experience, if you see a big vacant lot somewhere in a city like this, there's probably something to it.
Like right next door, we're at 36 and C Street, and there are 2 large vacant parcels right next to the building that we're in.
They're going to be developing on this.
Yes.
For,
Yeah, this one's coming soon. It's pretty exciting.
This one, the Teamsters had owned forever, and they just recently sold that to Titlick. So who knows what Titlick does?
Yeah. But many others, you look like, what a prime spot. And then you talk to somebody and say, oh, don't go near that
But
one.
it may not be wetland. It just might be 18 feet of peat.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
it's
true
just
too.
possible.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
I see King Street at C Street, and you start going down towards O'Malley. It prohibitively gets deeper and deeper with peat.
Yeah, and one thing, and we talked about this at Planning and Zoning earlier, I guess it was last week, is what can we do to allow people who want to build, and especially housing, make better use of lots that are partially encumbered by wetlands, right? So say you have a 1 acre lot and 80% of it is wetlands, maybe you can still do something with that 20%. So what can we do to update subdivision rules? We have the cluster housing, the narrow lot housing, the conservation housing, many of these subdivision types that haven't really been widely used. I think conservation has been used once or twice. So we're now looking at, and we talked about this with planning and zoning, looking at how can we make it a little bit easier to do smaller scale subdivisions to fit onto the existing. So then somebody can build on that developable part without touching the wetlands. Whereas right now they say, oh, sorry, your lot sizes can't go smaller than that. Oh, you can't concentrate, or you can't have minimum lot widths of that size. Because say you have a 1 acre lot and you want to do 5 dwelling units per acre, rather than subdividing that and having to have some of your lots in the wetlands, what if you could just concentrate those all at the front? You save on utility and water costs. You get slightly narrower lot widths. So that's a discussion we're having. But
Being more creative, being more flexible,
allowing them, yeah.
allowing more.
Let the market determine if they want that.
Correct. Yep. It's really all about the market. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're looking into that because it does seem as there's been a lot of really cool stuff going on with housing and development, and people are looking at properties that were previously unbuildable or just it's not viable. And we have seen an uptick in stuff that previously it's sat vacant for many years. So maybe there's something else we can do. And again, our role is to balance the needs of development community and also to balance the desires of the public to preserve the wetlands. And we're also thinking long term. For us, it's like wetlands are sort of infrastructure services. It's cheaper to have a wetlands do your stormwater than do after the fact stormwater retention or build in all this extra stuff, right?
Because it's natural and it doesn't
Exactly.
require. Yeah.
So it's those 3 pieces of doing that. But I think it's pretty exciting to see. And like you mentioned, some of the wetlands are changing or where they are is changing. So that might mean what can we do with lots that are partially encumbered? Some lots, I think they're a wetland. They're probably always going to be a wetland.
So as we've moved, away from the wetlands that we've developed around Anchorage, now we're having to focus, look back in and say, how can we use these spots? Is our weak link going to be, and I don't, this is the question, is a wetlands bank. We've got Great Land Trust, and like I said, I think maybe the railroad, but does Great Land Trust run out of credits? It's essentially, here's your bank, and you're gonna trade a credit here for what you have at your place. What happens when that fills up? Because I know you can't just go tomorrow and create a wetlands bank. It takes quite a bit of effort to go through and do, otherwise everybody would be doing it. But do we need to start looking at adding more wetlands bank? Because I think this is a geographic area too. You can't go do it and put a credit in Bethel or put a credit in Fairbanks for one here in Anchorage. Geographically within your area?
I don't know the specifics, but I imagine it would be because holistically you could say, great, we're developing a bit more in Anchorage. That means we preserve something else in Alaska forever. That's great regionally, but it doesn't necessarily address the concerns we might have here.
One airport job might blow up the wetlands bank we do have. I don't know, but it just seems like we should probably start getting, and maybe they are, but are we getting more wetlands banks?
There's a private bank out of Eagle River, and I can't remember what the gentleman's name is. And that's an interesting thing about how do you go about getting a bank? How do you create a wetlands bank?
Right.
First, you got to buy some really bad soil.
And then get somebody to pay you to put an easement on it.
And you get someone to pay you to
Trade
put it
it.
in a wetlands bank.
Yeah, that'll be part of this update, or that type of discussion. This update is a great place to have that discussion.
Does the city even think about, sometimes it's better have the NGOs do the work instead, but the cities, with all the land that we have, as far as going up to Kootenai, on down Bird, Indian, and with what we've got in the Anchorage Bowl, do we start opening up our own wetlands banks?
I can't speak too much to Heritage Land Bank, but I know they are pretty involved in this. You've worked with them a lot more. Whether there's a role there or not, I don't know, but I think they are already involved in a lot of sort of assemblage of parcels and that sort of thing. I don't know if they're involved in the trading of it yet, but Heritage Land Bank does seem to be an entity that could maybe potentially do something like that.
But I was saying, do we work more with them or with others to really kickstart a couple more wetland banks if that's what we need? That's part of this. So we're restructuring with long-term planning here.
That would be a great comment.
Do we
If
have enough wetland banks to support a future developer?
if we get that feedback, that'll help shape the
Now,
project.
that's an interesting question. Though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's not like you want to get rid of all your wetlands. You wouldn't have Cuddy Park. You wouldn't have a lot of these spots here. Well, part of why we all like to live here and enjoy it, what you able to target, like a 7 C Street, it just makes for a nice environment instead of just blacktop. We do have to figure that out as we want to start, as this city's growing, still having to do some encroaching on some of these lands. Do we have enough credits of these to do?
Yeah, I think that should factor into the discussion a lot. It's great. We're lucky we have the person doing our wetlands update is Emily Creeley from Dow. She's the chair of the Watershed Natural Resources Commission. Loves wetlands, but also understands the realities of it. We're really excited about that just because I think we have a really good team doing that who understands the local needs here. They also love wetlands. It just feels like I think we're going to get to a really good, at least a clear way forward. There's a lot of uncertainty and unclarity right now. So
they're not on one extreme or the other. I mean, they appreciate not everything's a wetland, and there's a reason why we have to protect wetlands.
Right.
Sites if they can look down the middle of the road for that.
it is heartening too because they're so excited to do this project. They're like, oh, I love. It's like maybe when I talk about zoning, people their eyes glaze over. When they start talking about wetlands, everybody else.
Oh no, we pay a lot of attention to zoning. Yeah.
We all love zoning, but they love wetlands like that. So, and we're basically going to do a bunch of work this fall, and then halfway through do an open house to check in with the public and say, here's kind of what we found. Here's the way things are moving forward. A lot of continued work with the Watershed Natural Resources Commission, which is a panel of experts to look in, but there will be chances to talk to the development community as well.
I think what was interesting when you were talking about the partial development of a wetland lot, what we've done historically in the past and are still continuing to do is trying to design around the wetland. But the problem is we have to stay within the zoning rules and regulations. So your idea of if we have a wetland and you can tie some exceptions as far as zoning requirements, that would be extraordinarily helpful and help develop, because otherwise what you end up with is with a large lot, which is more expensive, right? Because you have to comply with the existing zoning. But if you could have an exception to that zoning, you could have the wetlands, and people enjoy having the wetlands as open space and all that sort of thing. And instead of having an acre lot with wetlands in $1 million house, you could have 3 lots or 3 houses. I think that's a very innovative and excellent idea. The problem for most of us in residential development is we have to commit to a single type of zoning, regardless of what the topo is, regardless of what the amount of the wetlands is. And that prevents that prevents more density, which is one of the reasons why you have $1 million and $2 million houses.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too, because though that might also, we like to think of the housing life cycle, and there's people need different types of housing, different sizes of housing, different types in their life.
Yes.
But in my experience, most people tend to like to live in the same place more or less. So what you're talking about, it would be nice if in areas where people are living, maybe hillside areas, if there were different types of housing there as well.
Yes.
It gives people another chance. So
Yes.
I'm getting older, I think I want to downsize. And now there's something a little bit smaller just
Right.
down the hill, so I'm still in my general area.
Exactly.
Neighbors.
We can't do that now because of
Yeah.
our zoning.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. We can't do that.
Yeah, we talked to planning and zoning about just looking at conservation subdivision, narrow lot subdivision, and maybe trying to simplify. We're having a discussion about unilot subdivisions. And again, if you have a 1 acre lot and say R1 or R6 doesn't want it to be more than 5 dwellings per acre, really what difference does it make if you have 5 units on one part of the lot versus 5 units spread out across that 1 acre lot? You're getting to 5 dwellings per acre no matter what.
But you're still talking about a zone. And that's the issue that I have, because in the last 5 or 10 years, I have done subdivisions that are R1, and there would have been a place for R2 within that community.
Yeah.
And it would be, we have multi-generational housing, and we have grandparents that want to live next to their grandchildren. So we could have townhouses, we could have ranches, smaller ranches, along with the traditional 23 or 2,400 square feet. But you can't have mixed density in a zone.
Yeah.
Maybe we get a part of that as RW, residential wetland. You just throw it right on there.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's probably the end of our conversation about wetlands, but I appreciate it. But that if you want to have more housing and of different types within a community, you can have lot subdivisions, or you can have cluster, but that does not change the type of housing. It just creates more of the same type of housing. And what I'm talking about is mixed density within a zone.
Probably through a PUD or something, right?
Sounds like a segue to your next podcast.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I'm sorry, but I had you here. I just had to say that.
Oh, I love to talk about it.
You're in charge of of the planning.
Yeah.
That's just because that's how you get also different ages and things there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're the young that's just starting out in life, the ones with the kids, and then the ones that sold and downsized.
Exactly. Why can't they all live together in a community?
I have a friend, he lives up on the hillside. He's lived there 10 years. He's about, I think he's 30 something. And he lives with an older couple, and it works out great. He lives in their ADU, and when they're gone, he sort of looks over the house, and they have this really nice functioning situation for so many years. And it's great. He loves it up there. I think most younger people are living down here, and he's like, no, I love it. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting opportunities that I think a lot of people would really enjoy.
All right. Any final advice?
We'd love to hear from anybody. We're getting our wetlands update page going live soon. We'll be putting out information through our newsletter. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us, or ideas,
You're going to
suggestions.
give us your cell number?
Here's my personal address.
Yeah. We're good. We're good.
You're thinking about November, October, when you're talking about a little bit of an open house there?
So we just had the kickoff yesterday, and they're gonna try and do some mapping initial. Really, they're just checking the existing map to see where they can make some changes. So that'll be hopefully the rest of the season. And then maybe November, December, we might have an open house. And that's going to be both about, here's some of the technical pieces we've seen, and here's what we're looking in terms of the policy direction. And they're ambitious. They're trying to get it done by next year, 27 already.
Great.
But yeah, we just really want to, it's a technical update, but there's some policy pieces too. But we really want to hear from all sides on this. And because again, planning is about trade-offs and just getting all those people in the room, all those values in the room. It's kind of similar to our seismic layers. We're also doing a seismic layers update, which has been going on for about 1.5 years now. So in a year or two, Anchorage will have a new wetlands map that's more up to date and a new seismic layers map, which is up to date.
Did anything change?
That's probably for another podcast, but it's interesting. Right. A lot of those layers, they came from basically observations done after the 64 earthquake. Oh. So
we've got ground penetrating radar and other things.
All sorts of, and now, the science of earthquakes go like this and go like this. Back then they thought earthquakes just kind of went like this. So there are places, and they found in the 2018 earthquake that stuff happened in places they didn't expect it to happen, like stuff bubbling out or this and that. So yeah, I don't know much about seismic, and you'd think, how different can it be? The rocks and soils are still there, but there have been some changes to the way that they understand how earthquakes happen and whether there's lateral movement or up and down movement.
If it's your earthquake insurance, though.
Yeah.
Oh, it's expensive. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the benefit of that is it might show some areas where it's like, oh, there's high seismic risk, but actually it's lower, so it might be a little bit of both. I haven't seen the map yet, but that's also coming out.
I have a comment about the 2018 earthquake, because if you go and you take a look at, in a residential capacity, the areas that had the most damage, then you should look at the developer. Seriously. Yeah. Because if you are going to have all this mapping and we're going to know where things are and we still want to build on it, then there should be certain conditions about excavation, foundations, and all that sort of thing. And I can assure you that, at least anecdotally, in many instances where there was the greatest failure as far as residential properties are concerned, poor soils, not adequately worked.
There's an interesting, some research done, and the Geotechnical Advisory Commission is talking about that, and they're looking at how different parts of the municipality suffered or didn't suffer based on permitting and stuff like that. So there's some interesting stuff. Yeah, I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned out of
Yes,
that.
absolutely. That you can develop on poor soils, but there should be other restrictions. There should be restrictions applied to how that is to be created.
Like we discussed, you can develop anywhere if you have enough money, right? You can build a city on a oil rig platform out in the middle of the Pacific if you've got $1 gazillion. So enough money, enough engineering, anything is possible. But
You can create land. Yeah.
we're mostly working in the realm of the feasible here.
Yeah.
But
I think just to kind of finish up, as we look at what we've got with soils here today and going forward,
Yep.
you should make this a part of your due diligence.
Exactly.
Third party go in and essentially, it's not a verification, but it is a potential you might have wetland issues, or you've got something to fight against that says, hey, these have been dry for 10 years, the way things have changed, or maybe there was a diversion of a river, now all of a sudden you're dry over here. But having a third party go in there to essentially save you a lot of money because you can't develop or fight for your interests, to a due diligence should be part of the due diligence now, just like you do everything else.
And in residential, with some situations, especially in the affordable category, with private developers, they're unwilling to do all of that. But you really do need a third party, in my opinion, to talk to you or to talk to the Corps, because I don't have the language to do it.
That's right. Or they know,
Yeah.
hey, and they know the workarounds, right?
Yep.
Oh, what if we do this instead? Like,
Yeah.
maybe it's something they come up.
So you pay for a consultant up front, which ultimately will save you a lot of money.
That might be nice to
cost.
actually have a list of consultants.
we're looking at that too. And especially as we go through people updating their jurisdictions, we're trying to get more internal capacity for us to be able to evaluate that.
Yeah.
Until then, we are relying on sort of outside trusted sources. And so looking at that, we don't want to favor anybody over another, but we might sometimes we'll have, here's a list of people who have met our standard.
Qualifications. Yeah.
We've got that. Stable has got that for appraisers. I mean,
Exactly.
everybody's got that
Yeah.
a list that's been approved and done. So they just have to put the onus on them to have to put their information in.
Yeah.
See, I think in residential, what I'm seeing is there are very few large builders. There are very few developers left. And so we're going to have a new group of younger people, developers, builders coming in. And anything like that list would be extraordinarily helpful for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and anything we can do for them provide that public information that helps people make decisions and both protects the needs of the community, but also maybe reduces some of the costs of trying to
It
develop.
costs time and just makes it easy for everybody.
Yeah.
You know,
Increasingly, I appreciate the time cost. On our side, we don't really have a lot of time cost. On your side, time cost is everything. It's a difference between 1% or half a or whatever. That has a cost.
A lot of property is financed, right? And so these month-long delays, it's not 6% commission, not interest, it's or
Right.
9% or 10%, really.
It
So
makes a difference.
every month makes a big difference
Yeah.
and drives up the cost
Oh, yeah.
of whatever it is you're planning.
Yeah.
Daniel, thank you. That's a wealth of information.
Thank you so much.
I hope we didn't put you on the spot too much.
We're so happy to be doing this. We want more people to know about it. So it'll be great to have more engagement with this project. And it's perfect timing. We're just kicking it off soon.
All right.
kudos to you for getting Daniel the day after they kicked it off.
He's got a knack for timing, you know?
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Hello, everyone. This is a little bit of an extra that we're going to do at the end of every podcast. We're going to interview one of our Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Alaska Realty who's just completed a transaction. And so we're here today with Brittany Moses in her very, very nice office. I love your office. It looks really great.
Thank you.
How long have you been in real estate?
11 years.
11 years. So you know a lot, right?
I do.
Yeah. How did you end up, or how did you come to acquire this listing opportunity?
Yes, I had just closed on another multifamily property, and it was a difficult transaction, but very challenging, and it was wonderful experience actually. And so they referred me to a family member for another multifamily transaction, and I was not the first agent, so I came into an aging property that had already been on the MLS and got it sold.
So I'm wondering if because you have these multifamily opportunities, Didn't you tell me at one point in time that you have an accounting background?
I do. Yes. Yes, I have an accounting background. It seems like another lifetime, but yes, I did accounting.
Okay. Well, and you graduated here at UAA?
I didn't fully graduate at UAA. I actually graduated at University of Phoenix. So I did a hybrid. So half UAA, half University of Phoenix.
Do you think having that accounting background helps you in real estate?
Definitely. It allows me to understand the numbers behind these transactions, and it really helps me in a lot of deals, actually.
What was the most difficult part of the transaction?
Gaining the seller's trust. And because they were very weary, and they didn't think that we were all on the same team. So coming to that and getting them to understand we're in this together. I'm here for you. I'm here for to make sure that everything works out in your favor and everyone walks away happy. And that's what we did.
All right. So is this the second or third or fourth or fifth multifamily property that you sold?
Yeah, it's probably the fifth, actually. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us about fourplexes in today's market. There aren't any new fourplexes, are they? Most of them are older.
Most of them are older. Yeah, especially in Anchorage. You'll see them out in Wasilla, but in Anchorage, it's definitely an aging product.
So what are some of the challenges with an aging product like that?
Repairs, inspections. And a lot of things are coming up on those inspections that they're big ticket items.
Who pays for some of those issues, I guess? Does it usually come? That's the negotiating part, right?
That's definitely the negotiating part. Yeah.
What's your negotiating theory? Do you have a protocol that you follow? Do you have...
Not necessarily. It's more so picking and choosing the battle, right? You're either going with the cost up front or the seller doing the repair, coming down more so with credits so that the buyer can do their own repairs and everyone can be happy, because typically people have a different idea of how something should be repaired and the quality of work. So
it's better to put it on the buyer side.
Correct.
To give an allowance or a cost benefit or closing costs, and let the buyer do those repairs, because then he's going to be satisfied with them. He's the one that's going to have selected the contractor to do the work, and so the liability then is really off of the seller.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. We've just had a very similar situation like that in an older resale property. But the question I think that is most important, do you recommend that a seller get a home inspection or a property inspection prior to putting the property on the market or after?
That depends on the property, but
Okay.
I think it's helpful if the seller is aware that there's items that could pop up and they're willing to get it done. But then it also can give this, if the seller's not going to do it, they can disclose it and then price it accordingly. So
Okay.
that's where that helps.
All right. Well, that's Brittany Moses, and who sold 5 multifamily properties in the last couple of years.
Yes, for sure.
And what helps her a lot is her accounting background. So if you have a multifamily property that hasn't sold, right, you should call Brittany because she can get the job done. Thank you.
Thank you, Con. All right.
Thanks again to Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Alaska Realty for sponsoring this episode. If you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in the great state of Alaska, be sure to contact us. Connie Yoshimura at 907-229-273, or for commercial activity, Galati Michael, CCIM at 907-242-7603.